All right, guys, I am here in New York City with world-renowned dermatologist, Dr. Howard Sobel. I'm so excited to be here. Dr. Sobel and I have talked quite a bit about regenerative medicine and different ways to make the skin look and feel healthy. And so, Dr. Sobel, thank you for having Revive.
Thanks for inviting me. Really, it's like getting invited to CNN.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. So first and foremost with Dr. Sobel, just tell us your background. Obviously, you've been on some of the most major network television, different programs and obviously renowned for being in different magazines and dealing with different celebrities and things like that. Tell us your background. Tell us a little bit of how you got into dermatology.
Let me start at the core. When I was in college, I was playing basketball. As you can see from my height, I was not making it to the Knicks. and my best friend was a brilliant guy, 2 years older than me, and he was in medicine. And he said, why don't you take the MCATs and go into medicine? And now when you go into medicine, what field you pick is so different, meaning you could, if you go into dermatology, you go into internal medicine, you become a general surgeon, pediatric, endocrinology. There's so many different fields. So how do you pick a field? And I could tell you how I picked it, okay? I love the medicine part of dermatology, and I love the potential, I say potential, cosmetic part. Because when I went into dermatology, cosmetic dermatologic surgery did not exist. Mm-hmm. Yes, they were doing hair transplants, and I believe we had collagen at the time,
right,
which doesn't really work. So I had to make a conscious decision. I love the medicine part, and I still do. I don't feel that you take care of a patient and just take care of their cosmetic needs. As a dermatologist, you should take care of their whole body. So if someone comes into me with psoriasis and they also are thinning hair, I do both. I don't send them to someone else. You find out a lot of dermatologists, oh, I don't do that. And they send you to someone else. So I like taking care of the patient in entirety, meaning we become great friends. Yeah. Most of my patients are my friends.
Right.
Okay. Some of them are not, or some of them I don't even want to be friends with, but most of them are.
Right. And that's such a great point that you bring up, because nowadays you look at dermatology as a whole, and I can think of a number of instances where a friend has come into me and said, hey, this is my dermatologist, and I'm really looking into Revive regenerative products, but I went into my dermatologist and they only treat melanomas, right? Or they're only doing medical procedures and not cosmetic procedures. And when I think about Dr. Sobel and all the success that he's had in an illustrious career, and obviously being voted one of, if not the best dermatologist in New York City for I think 30 years now.
Yes, that's
I feel like it's because you are so versatile in what you treat.
Well, I think you don't stand still.
Yeah.
You stand still, your practice withers away. Patients move on to other people, and that's what's happening now in dermatology. Possibly dermatology more than any other field.
Right.
There are so many other people coming in now, whether they're PAs and nurses, and big businesses come in. Yeah. I can't tell you how many people, big businesses, want to buy my practice.
Right.
And then you work for them. You're not your own person. You're not your own doctor. And I won't do that. A lot of people have done that and they've made a lot of money. And there's nothing wrong with that, because every profession, you want to make as much money as you can, but you also want to be their doctor, and you really want to care for them. So when I got into dermatology, it's interesting, because I think I started the first. I always say I think I started the first, because if you say the first, someone's going to come on there and say, I did it ahead of you. But they did. In 1992, we started one of the first complete doctor skincare lines, because at that time, all the companies, P&G, L'Oreal, Coty, Avira, they didn't have anything. They didn't have ingredients in their products.
Right.
If it was wet, you dried it. If it was dry, you wet it. So we actually came out with the retinols. We came out with the vitamin C. we came out with all the different ingredients that you use now that we see in all the magazines didn't exist then.
Yeah.
Remember, I started in 92. Okay, that's a glycolic acid. You didn't even know what it was.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, when we started, a lot of small companies followed us, and then the big companies jumped in.
Right.
And then the big companies bought the little companies. In fact, we were sold in 2000, I think 7 it was, P&G.
Mm-hmm.
Now, P&G is such a big company, they had a hard time maneuvering a small company like DDF. We were big for being a small company, but we were very small for being a big company.
Right.
So, so they bought that and then they eventually sold it off. And then I started Sobel Skin after that. And I patented a formula, which is a solvent, which is the base. And anything you put into the base gets down deep into the skin and it's time released. So that was a big thing. And so Sobel Skin is out there and you can get it online. But DDF, I think, started it all. So I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
And I think I also, and I feel like I'm bragging too much about myself here, but I also helped bring or pioneer dermatology with dermatologic surgery. It didn't really exist. We all knew what plastic surgery is. In fact, a lot of the plastic surgeons now do dermatologic surgery in their office. Right. It's become one big turf war to a certain extent. Who should do the dermatologic surgery? Who should do the plastic surgery? Who's what?
Right.
That's always will be, that will always be. And it'll probably get worse as we get more and more, as you talk, companies like you come along and we're fighting for who should do what.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's been I would say sort of this shift, a paradigm shift, if you will, in aesthetic medicine, where you have a bunch of different practices, which we've talked about just a few minutes ago, different practices, different people doing different procedures. But when it comes to liposuction and skin tightening and things like that, you're an expert at that as well, not just the plastic surgeons out there. And Dr. Sobel and I are also talking about our product Retraction and also our product Emulsify, which he would benefit from.
Absolutely. I started doing liposuction, tumescent liposuction. If people don't know what tumescent, everyone thought liposuction, you've got to go into the hospital.
Yep.
You get huge blood loss. You got to stay there for a week. When I started liposuction in 1985, there's only a few cases that were done in the United States prior to that.
Yeah.
And plastic surgeons were not interested. They didn't think it was going to be a big thing. They got interested probably like 88, 89. And one of the doctors was a dermatologist, Dr. Jeffrey Klein, that started tumescent liposuction. The formula that you inject first and you get no bleeding. You get 2 teaspoons of blood in the whole procedure. In Europe, when they were doing liposuction, they had to give transfusions,
right?
Because the people were bleeding like crazy. They didn't have the fluid. They didn't have the epinephrine that stops the bleeding. Yeah. So when I started in 85, we took off. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, everyone started jumping into the field to the point that, it's gotten diluted out now.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot more liposuction then than I do now because there's so many people doing.
Right.
The pie is bigger, but there's more people in the pie.
Yeah. And then it comes down to results, right? And, that's where Revive has kind of come in with some of these great products.
You just turned me on to something. And I have to tell you, I like to think I'm on top of all the newest things, but it's impossible. It's totally impossible to know because every other month someone comes into my office and wants to sell me another laser,
right,
or another type of medical device. And you have to really look at this because, every medical device is $150,000. And, and then what happens is, and I have like a storage of medical devices and lasers. We call it it's like a graveyard. And I happen to have a big office. I don't know how these doctors that have small office, what they do with these lasers. Maybe they throw them away. We don't, because there's always a reason for using one of your older lasers that you're familiar with for something.
Yeah. And that's why you have to be on the forefront of understanding the technology and really where the business is kind of going. And I think one of the biggest things for technology in general is making sure that it's not just a commodity or just a fad or something like that. And I love that you brought up liposuction because this podcast is really not even about liposuction and subdermal skin tightening. But now that we're on the topic, That's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere for a guy like you. It's not going anywhere for those plastic surgeons. You talked about that turf war, but retraction and emulsify, they've kind of taken the market by storm. One of the top selling products in all of South America right now, quickly becoming the top subdermal skin tightening device in the US, but it's not going away, right? Whereas some of the other products that you have, like you said, you have clauses of those go away, right?
Well, now when you think of liposuction, especially tumescent liposuction, when you do it under local anesthesia and the patient a couple hours later walks out of your office, sometimes they go to work next day. Or
Yeah.
I always tell them to take off a couple of days. But it's about changing the silhouette, the contour of your body.
Yep.
Liposuction should not be for somebody as a weight loss. And we don't need it anymore. With all the drugs out there, for weight loss drugs out there, no one needs to lose weight by liposuction.
Yeah.
After they lose weight, then they could use liposuction to contour their body and tighten their body. And we could talk about that, your Avira that we're going to talk about soon, to how after you do liposuction, what do you do to tighten, the skin if it's possibly loose? And you're going to talk about this new product that I don't know much about that maybe you'll get me to buy next week.
Okay? Exactly. All right. Kind of jumping into the second part again. When we look at products in our industry and, for the thousands of viewers that we have out for the show and the comments that we've received is, the technology advances that Revive has had has really been tailored towards regenerative medicine, not just, these kind of Me Too devices and things like that. And in comes Avira, right? And so bringing Avira into Sobel skin was a big deal for you because it was sort of this advancement in RF that we haven't seen in probably 5-10 years.
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about.
I have several other RFs in my office, and again, sometimes you see some of the reps that come in and they bring in these new machines and you think you could just take off the label and switch labels because the machine is exactly the same.
Right.
But there's no difference. But with your RF, it has monopolar, it has bipolar, and I try to stay ahead of everything. I don't have the newest of everything because no one does.
Right.
But what does it do? Some of these other machines are very similar, but they have bipolar and monopolar all in one. You can't dial it up or dial it down. In the case of Avira, the monopolar, goes much deeper. We use it with a plate, which means it goes from the dermis into the deeper dermis, from the epidermis into the dermis, into the deeper dermis, all the way into the adipose tissue. So we were heating up the tissue and we're building collagen, elastin, and fat. Because as we know, as we age, that decreases. From the day we're born, that's starting to decrease.
Yep.
And I can see it in my own belly. And we'll talk about hair loss soon also. I'll tell you about that. But so I got this device because I can now have the bipolar, monopolar. Say someone comes in, she's 30 years old, and she just has some fine lines and wrinkles and some large pore size. I can use a monopolar just on her, with the microneedling. And the microneedling is 1 to 2 megahertz at one firing. You can't get that in any of the other lasers. The other lasers fire and that's it. So I have that flexibility, but most of the patients are in their maybe 40s and they have a lot of sun damage and they have a lot of loss of elasticity and a lot of loss of dermis and fat. So I use the monopolar first, then the bipolar, and we stack it. They call it the sandwich. You can't do that with any of the other lasers. The sandwich effect. So almost everyone, when you talk to them and you tell them what this laser does, they all want the sandwich effect. They don't want, if I could get the sandwich effect, why would I just do one?
Right.
But if a young girl comes in, I'm not going to do the monopolar on her. I'm just going to do the bipolar, which with the microneedling. So it's a special device. So, and that's how I think I bought all my machines. I bought my machines by doing the research. And I also bought all my machines by practicing. And I have my office manager, that's my guinea pig. She's actually standing at the door so no one walks in here and disrupts us. And she's our guinea pig. If it works on her, it could work on anyone.
I love that. That's awesome. So, kind of transitioning, one of the things that we talked about, about an hour ago was the importance of not just having one sort of dimensional RF platform. Now we adjust into the micro needling, a portion of the Avira device. What makes that so different than than something like Morpheus or other products that are out there?
Well, with the Morpheus, you don't have the monopolar,
Mhm.
right? You have the bipolar with your microneedling.
Mhm.
I don't have the flexibility to dial up, dial down, and use them together. I can't do that sandwich effect. I love the sandwich, and I mean, almost 90% of patients walk in here, they want both. When you tell
Yep.
them when you discuss what they both do, they're going to get one. Why not do? Why not do it all? And there's almost no downtime. These are radio frequency machines, non-invasive machines. Understand that. These are not lasers. Most lasers, there are non-invasive lasers and there are invasive lasers.
Right.
But this is a non-invasive radio frequency, and you get two for the price of one.
Yeah.
And you can't beat that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just like everybody else that has purchased the Avira, and obviously there's a lot of physicians that aren't at the same caliber of Dr. Sobel, but everyone said the same thing. Avira is the best radio frequency platform of its age, of its time.
I think your best doctors, and I think your best doctors, not just doctors, it's the office also.
Mhm.
It's your nurses, it's your people in the front. That's what makes, like, for instance, I just got, and I'm so excited for the second time in a row, I got voted one of the 49 best, not the 49, one of 49 best cosmetic surgeons in America by, what was it? The Hollywood Reporter.
There we go.
And I was excited by that, because, as you get older, they include all the younger people. The older people get sort of somehow go by the wayside. But, I think we keep abreast of all the new things. And that's why I think we're still relevant.
Yeah.
And that's the key. You got to stay relevant. You can't be archaic.
Yep.
Okay. And so I use Silicon 1000. Okay. That's somewhat archaic.
Yeah.
Because people had a lot of trouble with that. They use
Right.
non-medical grade silicone. We use medical grade silicone, and it's used for, say, someone has a bad nose job. They have a little dimple here, a little dimple here.
Mhm.
We fill it in 3 minutes. They just saved themselves $30,000 on a nose job. And I could just tell you, I walked into a wall, and I had a deep depression in my nose here, and I noticed my nose was going to the left. The other day, we had some downtime. I went into the room, and I just went in 3 minutes. I filled in my side of my nose. I have a straight nose now. So, and that will never go away.
Right.
So it's good and it's bad because it's permanent.
Right.
So a lot of doctors stay away from it. So you just do a little at a time. And if you know what you're doing, you save someone a big surgery.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we've done.
Mhm.
And some of the other things, I don't want to get away from the Avera because that's what it's all about here. One of my most exciting things, and you said your company's going to get involved with this as well, is, and when we talk about all the biologics, we'll talk about that, is TEDS.
Mhm.
By the time you're 50, and males have lost half their hair,
Mhm.
50% of their hair, and women 30%. And that's one of the biggest things I actually do in my office now. TEDS, it's called Trans-Epidermal Delivery System. And it's acoustic waves, sound waves that drive in whatever you put on the scalp. And when we first started about a year and a half ago, we got growth factors from the company. We got growth factors from all different other companies, and finally got a company called Carafactor that has really done the work, the research. They have 9 biometric growth factors, all specific for the hair follicle. So when you put it on the scalp and you drive it in with the TEDS, which is the acoustic waves, it gets into the hair follicle, opens up the hair follicle, puts it in an anagen growing stage, telogen stage where hair falls out. It's hardly in that stage anymore. It's only in a growing stage. The hair thickens. As I was getting older, my own head, I was starting to get a yarmulke here. Okay. And I'm not religious. Okay. And all of a sudden, I used it for 6 treatments. And in 6 treatments, you don't use it.
Right.
For 6 months, I should say, a month apart. And you use a solution at home. And we also use it with minoxidil and finasteride. It's a whole combo.
Right.
So that's what's key. And people are actually growing hair. So I'll tell the people out there, do things like TEDS, keep your hair follicle open now, because in about 2-3 years, I think we're going to have a cure for male pattern baldness. And female pattern baldness, just as serious as male pattern baldness.
Yeah, and Revive, we're on the forefront of these exosomes, right? And these exosomes that we have, one of our exosomes called Grow is growing hair, right? And
Right.
we have our product called Hydra SH, which is very similar to what Dr. Sobel's talking about, radio or ultrasound on the hair follicle. We're putting the exosomes on them, and we're regenerating hair, we're regrowing hair, and it's coming in troves.
Very similar to what I'm doing with the TEDs.
Exactly.
But
the same.
you may have a better machine.
I think we do. I think we do.
Okay, I got to go to the bank again, guys. Okay, here I
So
go.
jumping into sort of another portion of this, Revive, right?
Right.
So the company Revive Regenerative is on the forefront of a lot of different newer technologies, a lot of the biologics, even peptides and things like that. You could have gone with any other company for microneedling, whether that was InMode or Cartessa or some of these other guys. Why Revive Regenerative? Why did you choose our company with the Avira?
I think your company's on the forefront of newer wave. I think some of these other companies, without mentioning them, they're still they're stale. They're bringing back their old lasers, their old microneedling, making it a little better, but basically it's the same thing. You guys are regenerating, and that's a good word.
Yeah.
You're starting from the beginning, and it's making it better from the start.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think your company is way ahead of a lot of these companies that have been here for the last 30 years. And I must have 20 lasers, and I'm always looking for that company that's on the forefront. Like you said, you went to Korea,
Yep.
and Korea is absolutely on the forefront. So is Israel with lasers, and you went there, and you could tell everyone how you did it.
Yeah. No, Avira's great. Obviously, our great friends over at Skin Grab helped, bring this product to the US, and, going to Korea and seeing all the technologies over there. I certainly had the pick of the litter. And for me, Avira was one of the strongest products that was over there. And happy that Dr. Sobel got behind the product, and naturally, the product's just way ahead of its time.
With Avira, I get everything in one. I affect the deep dermis. I build up collagen, elastin, fat. I plump up the skin.
Yeah.
And then I use the bipolar to get rid of fine lines, wrinkles, pore size, and I affect the surface of the skin, the epidermis, and the higher layers in the dermis, where the monopolar goes down deep all the way into the adipose tissue. Nothing I know that does that. And it's non-invasive, which means, what does that mean, non-invasive? You can go to work the next day.
Yeah. Well, we talked about all-inclusive, not to use a hotel term in the Caribbean, but, Dr. Sobel and I were talking, and he said, Chris, you have what I think is the first all-inclusive device in RF, history. And I would agree with what you said there, because, it does everything. It allows you to do everything.
There'll be another laser company who will say they're better than you, or they advanced it. Well, they'll take what you do and try to make it better. But your company is right up there, meaning you're going to make what you gave me in Avira, and I'll bet you next year we're seeing here, and I have a better Avira than I have now.
Okay? I love that. Yep. So third segment here, and Dr. Sobel's got patients walking in the door right behind the camera here, coming to see him. The state of regenerative medicine, my favorite question to ask the prominent guests on our show. You've been on the forefront of regenerative health, aesthetic medicine, as long as anybody in the world right now. And where do you see this going? Where do you see the state of aesthetic medicine going over the next 5, 10, 20 years?
Well, we hear about, exosomes and growth factors, and a lot of doctors are not even sure what they really are, and they use them. And of course, peptides, and peptides are, you're going to hear a lot about peptides. You're still hearing a lot about peptides. I think now we're in the early phase of exosomes and growth factors, peptides, stem cells.
Yep.
Most doctors get it all mixed up. Even I do some to a certain degree, but it's not going to be just dermatology. It's your orthopedic surgeons for your knees, for your necks. It's going to be in all fields of medicine. It's just starting now.
Yeah.
And doctors are using it, sometimes using it not knowing what they're doing, meaning they hear about a peptide
Right.
and it's taken from shark peptide or salmon peptide, and they put it on the face and they think they're going to grow collagen. I'm not sure if we're there yet.
Yeah.
I think a lot of companies are putting a lot of money behind it. And I bet you when we have a conversation a year or 2 years from now or 3 years from now, I'm going to be able to give you more data. I
Yeah.
remember 15 years ago, no, 20 years ago, we had frozen growth factor. I wrote an article with he was a biochemist in Canada. And we used to deliver when I had DDF, that was the name of my company, Doctor's Dermatologic Formula, 92. We delivered it frozen to people's houses. And that's what you're seeing now.
Yeah.
Exosomes, the growth factors. I had an article that was supposed to be in Vogue. I was nervous because no one even knew about growth factors then. And I was afraid that all of a sudden, if someone put it on their face and they got a melanoma, it stimulated a melanocyte, I'd be in trouble. Now it's a different story. Now we know so much about growth factors and exosomes, but we still have a lot to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, peptides, a lot of the peptides are, going through FDA clearances and trials. I know there was a big hearing last week in Washington, D.C., and a couple of, Revive physicians actually attended that meeting to kind of see where the state of peptides were at. Dr. Perlman, Dr. BBL, both two guys that brought up peptides on their show. So it is becoming sort of this hot topic, I think, in all of medicine, but specifically with dermatologists and plastic surgeons.
Without a doubt. But it's going to be widespread. You're going to see it. And then, of course, we have the robotic surgery now.
Yeah.
You're going to have robots doing things that doctors did before. So medicine in general, I may not have to come in here anymore.
Yeah.
I may just sit home and hit a button, and then my robot, puts whatever on your face and does your hair transplant. And it sucks out your fat. So who knows? I may be replaced. Good thing I'm on the latest part of my career.
I don't think anyone's going to replace you, Dr. Sobel. But we've got a few different robotic prototypes in the works right now that will make a lot of your estheticians' lives a little bit easier. I don't think anybody will ever be able to replace that human brain, that person that's making correct and insightful decisions for their patients. And like you said, one of the most important things in operating a practice, and especially operating a prominent world-renowned practice, is your staff, right? I talk to Carol, I text Carol, she texts me right back. She's always making sure that I have what I need before I even come into your office just to talk to you. But, these are people that you've kind of built your career around, and these are people that ultimately make the practice, right?
Absolutely. She's with me over 30 years, and she knows what I'm thinking before I know what I'm thinking. And actually corrects the thinking when it's wrong. So it works. An office that has constant changeover is not a good office.
Yeah.
Okay. Because patients get to know your people in your office, and they like to say, "Hi, Jane. Hi, Susan. Can't wait to see you next week." That's part of a good practice. And as we spoke, part of a good practice is always staying ahead of the game. And your company, a relatively new company, is staying ahead of the game. They started ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And I think they will continue.
Awesome. Well, listen, guys, I usually say, hey, if you're in the same state, come and see the physician that I'm talking to. But guys, I don't care where you are in the world. Fly into New York. If you're in the US, come see Dr. Sobel. The conversations that I have with Dr. Sobel are not only insightful, they're educational for myself, but also I'm learning about what Revive needs to put in our portfolio and where aesthetics needs to go. And having a guy like Dr. Sobel on the Revive Regenerative team and having our products and things like that is just a massive thing to have. So please come see Dr. Sobel. Come check out Avira and soon to be Retraction and Emulsify. And, I'm really thankful and appreciate you having me in here today.
No, I appreciate this discussion. And, you always want one major, company that answers your questions. And I think it's going to be you from now on.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Dr. Sobel. Stay tuned, guys, and we'll get this episode out here in the next day or two.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Was it good?
Incredible.